Jaxon Smith-Njigba will be on the active roster when the Seahawks begin the 2023 NFL season. That, as well as other Seahawks roster news that we'll get to on this edition of Seahawks Today. But first, let's give a warm welcome to JSN back to your Seattle Seahawks. Here's what I want you to do as we begin today's show. I want at least 300 comments spamming JSN to shout out JSN. Where you at, 12s? Give him a warm welcome back. Seahawks football is almost here, and we're about to see the wonders of Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Shout him out in the comments section. We'll get started. Tyler Jones here. Thanks for joining us. Let's begin with a tweet from Ian Rappaport this afternoon. Seahawks wide receiver Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who recently underwent surgery to repair a small broken bone in his wrist, is expected to begin the season on the active roster, source said. No word yet on his availability for week one, but avoiding IR/designated to return is a sign he'll play soon. Big for the Seahawks that Smith-Njigba will not go on the PUP list. If he were to go on the PUP list, he would be out for at least the first 4 games to begin the season. Now, his status remains uncertain for week one. We're not sure exactly if he'll play that game or not, but at the very least, progress is going the right direction for JSN, where you didn't have a major setback to force him to miss those first few games. Pete Carroll recently on JSN saying this. He came back to the building and he was playing with the football. He was ready. He was talking like he's okay. His attitude is great. That might say it is going to be 10 days or something. Well, I'll tell you this much. 13 days until week one, till the Seahawks kick off their season against the LA Rams. So that lines up with Pete Carroll's 10-day timeline. More from Carroll. He wants to get going and get running and all of that, so we'll see how that works out. He is the kind of kid that we will have to hold back more than anything. I'm really pleased about it. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I'm a doctor here. I'm only a commentator, just giving you the news of the day and reacting to it. But I'll say this. From the surgery to the information of him getting back and what Pete Carroll has to say, all of it is a good sign that he is very, very close to returning to that football field and being back there week one when the Seahawks take the Rams. Everything we've heard is exactly what I would want to hear if the hope was to get JSN back. To recap, if you recall, he suffered a fractured wrist in the second preseason game against the Dallas Cowboys. He's projected to be the Seahawks' number 3 wide receiver in 2023. And the timetable of when this injury was supposed to occur, of when he would make his comeback, we were told was around 3 to 4 weeks was that timeline. It seems like things are still matching on pace for him to be back for week one. The last time we saw JSN, he was spectacular in the 2 games he played in the preseason. He was the Seahawks' second leading receiver for those preseason games, only to the one and only Jake Bobo. Had 5 catches, 83 yards, close to 17 yards of reception. And I would argue JSN, in the 2 games he played, was the best player on the football field in those 2 games. So, your chance to be a doctor here on Seahawks Today. Will JSN play week one against LA? Y for yes, N for no. What do you think? Is JSN going to play? Chime in, tell me what you think in the comments section. Folks, we're covering Seahawks football each and every day here on the channel, but this is a huge week with roster cut-down day coming up tomorrow. I got some insights for you that I'm going to bring you here in a couple moments, but I want to make sure you're subscribed. That way you stay up to date with what's going on here with these roster cut-downs. We're going to be all over it here on the channel. Turn on notifications. That way you're the first to find out what the Seahawks 53-man roster looks like. Can I get 30 subscribers off today's show? I think that's reasonable. Can I get 30 of you to subscribe today? That way you don't miss anything. I don't want you to miss out. I'm just looking out for you. Subscribe now for free and make sure you're here tomorrow for roster cut-down day here on Seahawks Today. Now, to this point, the Seahawks have made 8 total roster cuts. The most recent was tight end Griffin Herbert was the move that they made today. There's still a ways to go in this process of what the Seahawks are going to do from here. More on that here in a second. Let's start off with Brady Henderson of ESPN with this tweet this morning on Hebert, saying the Seahawks are continuing to make cuts today ahead of tomorrow's deadline for teams to trim their rosters to 53. They've informed tight end Griffin Herbert that he's being waived, I'm told. Hebert is a UDFA from Louisiana Tech. Now, just being real with y'all, this is not a knock on Griffin Herbert at all. But if we're being real, how many of you even knew who Griffin Herbert was? I mean, it's not the end of the world, okay? The Seahawks are going to be fine without Griffin Herbert there. But now you look at the roster cuts they've made so far. When you add in Flowers, Marshall, Franklin, Wayne, Jordan, Chris, Sal, and now Griffin Herbert to the equation. Of those 8 guys, here's the big takeaway for me at this point, is none of them are huge surprises. But it also means that none of those guys are going to be practice squad guys. The next round of cuts that are the borderline guys to make the roster, those are the ones to watch for the practice squad. These 8, they're done. They're on a plane home somewhere, and they're not coming back. Now, the next round of cuts that we see, there's going to be some decisions you don't like, but that's the nature of the business. That's the job that John Schneider and Pete Carroll signed up for. You might not like it, but they'll do it. With that said, currently right now there are 82 players on the Seahawks roster. Decisions remaining is a total of 29. 29 players awaiting their fate to see if they make that roster or not. The deadline is tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific time. That is when we'll know what the 53-man roster looks like. Now, just because of that doesn't necessarily mean that we'll know for sure what the opening day roster is, because the following day at 1 p.m. Eastern, we have the waiver claim deadline where the Seahawks could claim other players from around the league that get caught by other teams. Now, the Seahawks, based on the way things went last year of making the postseason, are a little bit ways down on the waiver claim order, but it could still potentially happen if they find somebody they like. So, with that said, who's a player that the Seahawks should cut next? There's some notable names on that roster bubble. I got some thoughts that I'll get to in a sec, but I want to hear from you first. Your chance to be the GM here on Seahawks Today. Beat John Schneider and tell me who you think the Seahawks should cut next. Weigh in the comments section who you think that should be. A lot of excitement for the Seattle Seahawks and their throwback gear that they're going to be wearing Week 8 against the Cleveland Browns. And I got good news for the 12s out there. We here at Seahawks Today, we are looking out for you. We have throwback gear. And on top of that, it's on sale right now for up to 50% off. Everything from hats to long sleeves to shirts to beanies. These are just some of the options that we're offering. There's plenty more over at chatsports.com/Seahawks gear. You can get these and still have them in time before the season begins if you order today. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead and get your Seahawks throwback gear all the way back to the AFC days. I love this throwback gear myself personally. If I was wearing Seahawks gear right now, this is what I would be wearing. I would be rocking my hawk out to this throwback gear. Get yours now. Plenty of selections to choose from. Up to 50% off for a limited time. Chatsports.com/Seahawks gear is where you can find those today. So my watch list heading into tomorrow on Cut Down Day. Got to start out with the one and only, Jake Bobo. Bobo is a roster lock at this point in time. I would bet my life savings. I would bet my dog. I would bet a dinner, whatever you want. Bobo is going to make the roster at this point in time. He's done everything that they've needed from him throughout not just camp, but in the preseason, leading Seattle in receiving. In 3 games, he had 7 catches for 125 yards, close to 18 yards of reception, 2 touchdowns. Not only is Bobo going to make the roster, he's going to be the Seahawks' number 4 receiver when the season begins. With D. Eskridge being suspended the first 6 games of the season, without question, this is Bobo's job to take that spot. And I got to tell you, I know he's not the fastest guy. I get that. But the route running is there. The hands are there. The way he can get open. Bobo does it all and is a huge impact for the Seattle Seahawks team. And we haven't even really got to see him play with Geno Smith yet. Woo! Can you get a little excited for that? Bobo and Geno. Let's go. The movement continues for Jake Bobo himself. Here's all I want you to do. Go in that comment section right now. Let's hear it from Mr. Bobo. Spam more Bobo in the comments. Because Seahawk fans, I'm happy to report, you are getting more Bobo ahead. Spam it in the comments. I want to see as many more Bobos in the comments we can because the bright days are ahead for Jake Bobo. He's just getting started. Let's hear it now. Also, Levi Bell, another fan favorite, is also going to make the 53-man roster. He has to be in at this point in time. And what a story, just totally out of nowhere for Levi Bell. UDFA out of Texas State, played for the Michigan Panthers in the USFL this year, and in 6 games played, he was tied for 10th in the USFL in sacks with 4 in those 6 games. And what we've seen so far from him in the preseason, nothing short of spectacular. 5 tackles, 1 sack, played in those first 2 preseason games. It just was really, really good. And the thing about Bell, what's wild is a couple months ago, there was a lot of question marks about the outside linebacker position for the Seattle Seahawks. And it's amazing how things can change pretty fast. All of a sudden, this group that you could argue was a weakness for Seattle has become a position of strength. I mean, look at this group. You're going to start Boye Mafe on one side, Uchenna and Nwosu on the other, and then you got a bunch of rotational pieces that'll keep these guys fresh and really allow the Seahawks to change things up schematically and just make things difficult for offenses where they won't know what to expect. I mean, Darrell Taylor is a hell of a pass rusher. Derek Hall, I've been very impressed with what he's done in the preseason. I mean, Tyreek Smith, you go back that second preseason game, led Seattle in tackling. This guy was nowhere to be heard of last year. And then Levi Bell coming along here. This is a very, very good group. If injuries happen, whatever it may be, Seattle is going to be okay at the outside linebacker position. They got a lot of depth. This is one of the best groups on this Seahawks football team. Number 3 on my watch list, we turn our attention to Jonathan Sutherland. Yes, Jonathan Sutherland. Another name that before all this you were saying to yourselves, who's this guy? Well, he was an undrafted defensive back out of Penn State. And the game against Dallas was really a breakthrough game for this guy. 7 tackles. He also had a QB hit. And when you look at Jonathan Sutherland, it's not just that he's played well in the preseason and what he was able to do throughout camp, but you talk about a good pedigree and where he came from there at Penn State. This was a guy that was voted team captain 4 consecutive seasons at Penn State. And everything that we've heard about Jonathan Sutherland is not just how good of a football player he's shown up and been, but just the leader, the natural leader already showing, even as a UDFA and as a rookie, that goes a long way playing like a veteran there. Now, something to watch for with Sutherland. He is day-to-day with a leg injury, and he has been ahead on the depth chart of 6th-round rookie Jarek Reed to this point from New Mexico. Jarek Reed was pretty solid in the last preseason game in his own right. So maybe there's a situation where Sutherland ends up on the PUP list and Jarek Reed is on the active roster. Maybe they work it out that way. One way or another, we're going to see Sutherland around in some way, shape, or form, some fashion with this Seattle Seahawks team. What do you think on Sutherland? Does he end up making the roster right now? Chime in. M for make, C for cut. What do you think? Let me know. Finally, on the watch list, Artie Burns, sayonara. See ya. Artie Burns is gone. It's not a lack of effort from Artie Burns. It's just he's the odd man out. It's a numbers game, right? I mean, when we go down to 53 guys on a roster, somebody's got to go. And unfortunately, in Artie's case, there's just not a place for him at the moment. He showed some positives playing the nickel position against the Green Bay Packers on Saturday, but the Seahawks are just too loaded at corner around him. Artie would be making this roster had Jamal Adams not been activated and came back from injury, which is a very good thing. Don't take that the wrong way, folks. But think about this, okay? You look at the corner room right now. Rick Wallen, Devin Witherspoon, Mike Jackson, Kobe Bryant, I think, is going to play a little bit of corner and safety both. But with Jamal coming back, he probably goes back to the corner position for now. And then there's Trey Brown, who's been really good throughout the preseason, in particular the last 2 games. Where does Artie Burns go from here? I think Artie Burns is ultimately the odd man out in this equation at this point. I don't think he's making the 53-man roster. Hopefully he can stick around. Maybe there's a practice squad spot for him and he can be activated if there's an injury or something. But honestly, I just don't see where Artie Burns goes from here. It's not a lack of trying. Seattle's just too good. They're stacked at corner with a young corner room too at that. So we're not quite feeling the Burns here on Seahawks Today. It is of the opinion of Seahawks Today that Burns will not make Seattle's 53-man roster. If you agree with that statement, type T for true. If you disagree, that's fine too. Type F for false. Let me know what you think. Subscribe to the channel. It is going to be a hectic, a very busy day tomorrow. You will not want to miss any of it here on Seahawks Today. We will see you then. Thanks for joining us here on the channel.